Chapter 2802. The judging elder's action was giving Miao Yi enough face. It was also indirectly acknowledging Miao Yi's identity. That was acknowledging that Miao Yi was a Gu Miao genius. With the support of the judging elder, Miao Yang's group was going to suffer. On the selection platform, the girl who was the center of attention looked at the judging elder calmly. Her red lips curled into a sweet smile. Then, word by word, he unhurriedly said the answer to that question. Miao Yi's explanation was simple and concise. After she analyzed this goo worm that was an unsolved mystery, then she guessed several solutions to the goo worm. Finally, Miao Yi finished her explanation. The entire place was silent. The tribesmen looked at Miao Yi, their eyes filled with shock. They sucked in a cold breath in disbelief. They could not believe that Miao Yi knew this goo worm like the back of her hand. Clap, clap, clap. Suddenly, at the judging elder's seat, the elders clapped. The two judging elders rushed to Miao Yi excitedly. Well said. What Miss Miao said was too well said. Your answer can be said to be perfect. Not only the judging elders were excited. Even the other Miao tribe elders who were watching from the side could not suppress their excitement and also started to applaud. Miao Yi's answer was very detailed. And those solutions to the goo worm could be tried. She could clearly solve the goo worm that the Miao tribe had been unable to solve for hundreds of years, and she could even propose a solution. This was not something that could be answered simply by reading the records of the ancient books. Miao Yi's answer gave them the feeling that she had personally nurtured this goo worm. Miao Yi continued to smile calmly. However, if one were to look closely, one could also see the excitement and joy in her eyes gradually spreading. That was the smile of finally seeing the moon. That was the smile of finally getting recognition. That was the smile of finally being able to stand in public and talk about goo worms. That was finally all the hard work. It was really worth it. Miao Yi's heart could not stop trembling. The next question. The judging elder and the other elders did not give Miao Yang and the tribesmen a chance to ask questions. Such a rare opportunity. Of course they had to bring out all the problems that the Miao tribe had been researching for decades, even centuries, but were unable to solve. Miao Yi did not disappoint them. No matter what the question was, she answered all of them with ease. Moreover, every answer was very detailed. The few elders of the Miao tribe were almost boiling, about to explode. Write down every question. Miao Yang's face paled. At the end of the 9th question, Miao Yang was almost paralyzed in the grip of the guards, his face as ashen as a sheet. Who would have thought? Originally, he wanted to stop Miao Yi from becoming the future holy maiden. Miao Yi was reduced to a cheater who was ridiculed by the Miao clansmen. But this action had completely helped Miao Yi. As a result, all the clansmen were sincerely convinced of Miao Yi's strength. Instead, it made Miao Yi's position in the Miao tribe more stable. The 10th question, the last question. The judging elder exchanged glances with the other elders excitedly. For the last question, we must come up with the most difficult one. Yes, yes. Hurry up and think about it. The elders immediately echoed. Chapter 2803. After discussing for about half a cup of tea's time, one of the judges raised his head confidently as he looked at Miao Yi with a beaming smile. Eldest young Miss Miao, the last question, you have to think carefully before you answer. This elder will start now. Wait a minute. Suddenly, a clear voice came from afar. That voice was a deep female voice which was extremely dignified. The judge's voice suddenly stopped. Following that, he swiftly raised his right hand and pressed it on his left shoulder as he bent down towards the direction of the voice. A few of the elders whose eyes were still shining immediately hid their emotions and bowed in the direction of the voice. Not only that. The Miao tribesmen were completely silent as their expressions were filled with respect. One by one, they plopped onto the ground as they knelt down. Miao Zhilian and Miao Shuaidan both knelt down as well. Miao Yi was stunned as she hadn't reacted in time. The judge next to her tugged Miao Yi fiercely. Miao Yi staggered as she knelt onto the ground. At the stairs of the selection platform, two figures walked up the platform with steady footsteps. The one walking in front was a lady dressed in simple Miao tribesman attire. She was around 30 years old and looked gentle like water. But the imposing manner around her was dignified and noble. It made one look at her and immediately lowered their eyes, not daring to look at her again. Yi Qing Luo also noticed it. This lady's dressing looked simple. However, every ornament on the woman's body was exquisitely carved and extremely luxurious. Behind the lady was a white-haired old man in a white robe. Yi Qing Luo almost recognized the lady's identity at first glance: Sacred Lady. Miao tribesman's current Sacred Lady. As expected, all the Miao tribesmen greeted in unison, "Greetings, Sacred Lady." Miao Ji raised her hand. "Sacred Lady selection ceremony, no need to be so courteous." Saying that, Miao Ji directly found an empty seat on the selection stage and sat down. The judge elder eagerly stepped forward and said, "Lady Saintess has attached great importance to this Saintess selection. There is indeed a very outstanding candidate for the Saintess selection. I'll bring her over for Sacred Lady to take a look." "No need." Miao Ji waved her hand and said, "I saw and heard everything that happened here clearly." After she finished speaking, she lifted her eyes and looked straight at Miao Yi. Miao Yi had just stood up from the ground when she felt Miao Ji's gaze on her. She looked up and met Miao Ji's deep, probing eyes. She was startled, and there seemed to be some emotion surging in her eyes. But she restrained herself. She pursed her lips tightly and did not speak. After a while, Miao Ji stared at Miao Yi and said lightly, "There's one last question. I'll ask it. Do you have any objections?" When he asked the question, he felt a chill run down his spine. The elders were all stunned. Miao Ji was the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. His authority was above the Miao tribe leader. If she had a request, the Miao people must obey unconditionally. However, Miao Ji had actually asked for a candidate's opinion. And he even called himself me. What was the relationship between Miao Ji and this candidate? The clansmen were full of questions. However, the two people who were being guessed only stared at each other and did not speak for a long time. Miao Yi did not speak. Miao Ji didn't rush him. Until, after a long, long time later, everyone felt that their breaths were suffocating. Chapter 2804. Miao Ji's expression was cold and calm. Suddenly, her red lips curved. That faint smile hid a deeper meaning that no one could understand. She opened her red lips and asked, "My question is, how to successfully contract the ancient Gu King?" This question caused an uproar in the surroundings. The sound of people sucking in a breath of cold air could be heard one after another. Contract the ancient Gu King? The ancient Gu King was the treasure of the Miao tribe. The holy maiden of the Miao tribe was chosen by the ancient Gu King. It could be said that even if she passed the selection and made it to the end, if she could not get the approval of the ancient Gu King, the holy maiden candidate would be disqualified. The holy maiden said, "Contract the ancient Gu King?" Did the holy maiden want to contract the ancient Gu King? How could the treasure of the Miao tribe be easily contracted by a Gu master? Even if she was the holy maiden approved by the ancient Gu King, she could not contract the ancient Gu King. This question caused a lot of discussion among the crowd. Miao Yang, who was being held by the Miao tribe guards, had a crazy smile on his face. His mouth was gagged, so he could only let out muffled laughter. It sounded extremely strange. Ha ha ha, she was indeed the holy maiden. Just one question and Miao Yi was defeated. So what if Miao Yi was the genius of the Miao tribe? Looking at the entire Miao tribe, who had the ability and who dared to think of contracting the ancient Gu King? How could Miao Yi answer? It seemed that the holy maiden did not like Miao Yi. But it was true. Which woman would like a woman who was better than her? Miao Yi's existence had greatly affected the holy maiden's status. Miao Yang was full of joy and could not wait to see Miao Yi's defeat. As expected, when the girl on the selection stage heard Miao Ji's question, her face instantly turned pale. Miao Yi's heart trembled violently. She looked at Miao Ji in shock. What was the real meaning of Miao Ji's question? It was just a simple question. Or, did she know that she had signed a contract with the ancient Gu King, so she came to test her? However, no matter how Miao Yi looked at Miao Ji, Miao Ji's expression was very calm, giving off a sense of distance that prevented strangers from approaching. After all, Miao Yi's cultivation was still too shallow. She really could not understand Miao Ji's meaning. She tried hard to calm her mind and calm her tone and breathing. What is the meaning of the holy maiden's question? Just answer me. Miao Ji's smile was still as noble and distant as ever. Miao Yi pursed her pink lips and stared at her for several breaths of time. Then, she snorted and sneered. The sneer was very light. But Miao Ji heard it clearly. Miao Ji's expression changed slightly, but she soon regained her composure. The girl's indifferent voice had already reached his ears. As everyone knows, the ancient king of venomous worms is the treasure of the Miao tribe. No one in the world can tame the ancient king of venomous worms. Saintess asked me this question. Could it be that you have some inappropriate thoughts about the ancient Gu King? Miao Yi. The judging elder standing beside Miao Ji had never imagined that Miao Yi would say something so audacious. Was he provoking the saintess? Was she tired of living? The judges were so scared that cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. Chapter 2805. Miao Ji raised her hand. The judging elder's words were stuck in his throat as he didn't dare to continue. Miao Ji's emotions were indifferent and no one could tell what she was feeling. Her brows were very calm. What she means, I am very clear. The judging elder shuddered. Did Sacred Maiden develop a feeling of disgust towards Miao Yi? He opened his mouth, wanting to plead for Miao Yi. But when he met Miao Ji's deep and tranquil beautiful eyes, he couldn't say anything. Not only the judging elder was panicking. The other elders were also panicking. Miao tribe finally had such a talented Gu master. Without any special training, she was already so powerful to such an extent. If she was properly trained, in time, Miao Yi would definitely become the #1 Gu master in Miao tribe. An existence that surpassed countless elders and even Sacred Maiden. But the current Miao Yi was just relying on her Miao tribe leader's direct bloodline. If Sacred Maiden wanted Miao Yi's life, it was simply a piece of cake. They couldn't bear to lose such a Miao Gu genius. But they didn't dare to offend Sacred Maiden. Just as the elders were feeling apprehensive, deliberating over their words and wanted to plead for Miao Yi. Not only did Miao Yi not show any signs of fear, she revealed a totally different arrogance as she sneered and continued to provoke. Then, Sacred Maiden, what do you think I mean? Miao Yi. The judging elder was so angry that he gritted his teeth, showing a look of exasperation. Shut up. Do you know who the person in front of you is? Miao Yi scoffed, the coldness in her eyes spread throughout her entire body. She stared at Miao Ji, whose beautiful eyes were calm from the start, as the waves in her eyes surged wantonly. Miao Yi's expression was seen clearly by Yi Qing Luo, who was seated. She squinted her eyes and raised her brows. Yi and Sacred Maiden are old acquaintances? Furthermore, there are grudges. A man's deep voice floated from above. Getting the man's response, Yi Qing Luo's eyes curved as she immediately raised her head. Her eyes were almost glued to Dmo Xian's revealed lower jaw. Fair skin, smooth lines. His rosy lips seemed to be seducing her. In front of the beauty, Yi Qing Luo's eyes were dyed with a gorgeous color. Dear Overlord, do you know about their feud? So what if I know? So what if I don't? Dmo Xian lowered his eyes and looked at the young lady in his arms who was giggling like a cat that had stolen a fish. His gaze unconsciously turned gentle. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes curved even more. If you know, can I bribe my dear Overlord a little to secretly tell me some inside information? What bribe? Dmo Xian's eyes flickered with a brilliant light. Yi Qing Luo raised her slender fingers and tapped on her pink lips. A kiss from a beauty, do you accept this bribe? Dmo Xian's eyes darkened as his thin lips curled up into a faint smile. Are you trying to bribe me or are you trying to kiss me in the name of bribing me? Both. Yiqing Luo smiled like a flower as she hooked one arm around Dmo Xian's neck. So, what do you think of Overlord? The girl's exquisite face was reflected in front of him. Dmo Xian felt his throat tightening as he controlled the urge to lower his head and kiss her. After that, he squinted his eyes in a sultry manner, not saying a word. Yiqing Luo understood what he meant. She slowly propped herself up and planted her pink lips on his. Chapter 2806. Yiqing Luo pulled the distance between the two of them and raised her blushing face. Bribing is done, my dear Overlord, isn't it time to reveal some gossip? Dmo Xian's brows which were hidden under the mask rose as his thin lips curled up and his voice was indifferent. What gossip? I don't know. You. Yiqing Luo was furious. He didn't know. Put on an unfathomable look and still accepted her kiss? This was a fake kiss, right? Damn it, had she been tricked by Dmo Xian? Yiqing Luo expressed that the current Dmo Xian's tricks were too deep and she couldn't win him. Yiqing Luo gritted her teeth. Whereas Dmo Xian was languid and satisfied. Yiqing Luo's gaze shifted to the man's peerless face. Between her lips, there was still the man's elegant sandalwood scent. Decisively, Yiqing Luo kept away the unhappiness of being tricked and raised her eyes as her pink lips curled into an alluring arc as her little body leaned into Dmo Xian's arms. Don't know then don't know, anyway it's not a loss to bribe the Overlord for a kiss. On the selection stage. Miao Yi and Miao Ji were still quietly looking at each other. Facing Miao Yi's repeated provocations. Miao Ji didn't show any signs of anger. Miao Ji's expression was emotionless as her beautiful eyes looked at her face and her tone was indifferent. You think that I want to contract the ancient Gu King, right? Sacred Maiden's words made the elders' faces turn pale. Some of them who were holding things in their hands dropped onto the ground. What was the relationship between Sacred Maiden and this Sacred Maiden candidate? Why did they feel that? The atmosphere between them was so strange. In the face of the Saintess candidate's repeated provocations and obvious hostility, Sacred Maiden didn't show any signs of anger. Instead, that pair of calm beautiful eyes revealed a trace of helplessness. Helplessness? Did they see wrongly? The Saintess actually felt helpless? The elders were shocked, but the two people who were being watched did not care about it. Miao Yi's eyes dimmed slightly, as though there were some raging waves rolling in her eyes. She stared at Miao Ji, pursed her lips, and suddenly said, You were the one who suggested the last hurdle, the hurdle of nurturing the goo worm from tonight to tomorrow, right? Miao Ji didn't say anything. Miao Yi clenched her fists and continued to ask, Just now, the questions they asked me and the 10 questions were also your idea, right? Miao Ji raised her eyebrows. Her lips curled into a smile as she said, You're quite observant. This was also a tacit agreement. Miao Yi's fingers curled into a fist. The emotion in his eyes surged even more violently. It was as if in the next instant, it would surge out and destroy everything. Yes, she was indeed observant. It was as if he had noticed the interaction between Miao Zhilian and Miao Yang. She quickly came up with a countermeasure. Chapter 2807. In the beginning, Miao Yi did not understand why the Saintess, who had never cared about worldly affairs, would intervene in the selection of the Saintess. Moreover, he had proposed such a difficult hurdle. After seeing Miao Ji, she finally understood. Because she, Miao Yi, was this year's Holy Maiden candidate. So, Miao Ji came. The corners of Miao Yi's mouth twitched as a self-deprecating smile appeared in her beautiful eyes. Just say it. What do you want? Are you trying to force me to withdraw from the Saintess election, or are you trying to force me to leave the Miao tribe? As she spoke, a trace of loneliness flashed across her eyes. She lowered her head and gave an almost inaudible self-deprecating laugh. Miao Yi, what virtue and ability do I have to actually make you, the Miao tribe's saintess, personally come forward to deal with me? Miao Zhi's hands tightened on the table. It's getting late. Don't waste other people's time. What exactly do you want? Just say it. Miao Yi's gaze landed on Miao Zhi's tightly curled up hand. But soon, it disappeared. Miao Zhi remained silent for a long time. Miao Yi's frown deepened. The surrounding elders didn't dare to open their mouths to break the awkward atmosphere. Everyone could hear it. There must be a special relationship between Miao Zhi and Miao Yi. There was complete silence on the selection platform. After a long time, impatience appeared on Miao Yi's face. She knitted her brows tightly, turned around, and walked down the stage. As he walked, he cast his gaze towards Yiqing Luo. From Miao Yi's eyes, Yiqing Luo read her apologies. He seemed to be saying to her, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Did Miao Yi choose to give up the chance to become the holy maiden? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she looked at Miao Yi's slightly pale complexion, and then looked at Miao Zhi, who had a forbearing expression. If Miao Yi gave up the venomous worm in Dmo Xian's body, what to do? However, looking at the atmosphere between Miao Yi and Miao Zhi, if she really forced Miao Yi to continue participating in the later stages of the selection, to Miao Yi, it was too cruel. What should she do? Perhaps it was because of Yiqing Luo's inner fear. Dmo Xian sensed it. Suddenly, a large palm came at his waist. His warm palms were pressed tightly against her delicate body through her robe. The man's low and hoarse voice floated into her ears. Do you care that much that she's not the Holy Virgin? Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as she looked up at him. The man's beautiful peach blossom eyes shone brightly. However, no matter how seductive she was, but it lacked the tenderness when he looked at her. He was too indifferent. It was almost as if he was looking at a stranger with indifference. Yiqing Luo raised her fair fingers and bit by bit, through the golden mask, she covered his eyes. Before his hand could move, the man's large palm had already quickly clasped her wrist. It was very powerful. It seemed to be preventing her from touching him. Yiqing Luo laughed softly. However, his laughter was filled with bitterness. Of course I care. If she wasn't the saintess, who else could return you to me? Still? Dmo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes as he listened to the young lady's bitter voice. His heart felt inexplicably irritated. Especially when he saw the girl forcing herself to smile and her lifeless eyes. His irritability grew even more. His brows creased as his 5 fingers clasped the young lady's face. Whether she's the saintess or not, what has it got to do with me? Moreover, isn't I right next to you? The man's strength was very powerful. Yiqing Luo was forced to meet his gaze. Chapter 2808. The young lady was smiling. There was also a faint smile in Gu Pan's charming eyes. The tone in her words was domineering and devilish. However, that ethereal voice faintly revealed an imperceptible hoarseness and bitterness. It made one's ears hurt. Like thousands of fine needles, piercing fiercely into one's heart. It was the same for Dmo Xian. His heart seemed to contract fiercely. It was unbearably tight. The slender fingers which were holding the wine cup unconsciously tightened. The wine in the cup started to ripple. The surrounding lively people also quietened down. Their gazes were complicated as they looked at the two who were hugging each other. They looked so lovey-dovey. But Yan Xiaoyi and the others who had been following beside them, witnessing their feelings, how could they not tell? Between the two of them, there was no longer the deep feelings in the past. That's right. If Miao Yi wasn't the sacred maiden, what should they do with the 2 types of goo worms in the overlord's body? The atmosphere suddenly became a little gloomy. So gloomy that Dmo Xian's heart was contracting and suffocating feeling became clearer. He frowned his brows under the mask. His thin lips pursed tightly. The hand which was holding the wine cup put down heavily. just as he was about to open his mouth. The young lady who was leaning in the man's arms suddenly raised her head. A pair of warm and soft hands cupped Dmo Xian's face before he could even react. Dmo Xian frowned, but didn't push the young lady's hands away. The young lady tilted her head, her gorgeous face surfaced a tenacious and unyielding smile. So, my dear overlord, I will definitely let your eyes, completely, only see me. Dmo Xian swallowed the words which were at the tip of his tongue. His quiet gaze met with Yi Qing Luo's. Yi Qing Luo's hand sent his face, and immediately crashed into his arms. It's alright if you're not willing to be the sacred maiden, no matter who the sacred maiden is, it's alright. At most, he would just use some tricks. When Miao Yi walked down the selection stage, her gaze was always on Yi Qing Luo. And naturally, she saw the interaction between Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian. The environment she grew up in had given her keen senses. Miao Yi naturally saw through Yi Qing Luo's momentary loss of composure earlier. Her feet suddenly felt as if they were being pressed down by a 1,000-pound boulder. She could not move her feet. If she couldn't become the Holy Maiden, she wouldn't be able to enter the Holy Maiden Pavilion, and she wouldn't be able to get rid of the love goo and the heart separation goo for Dizun. Qing Luo had done so many things for her. He protected her in everything. He also used his actions to show that he would become her backer. But this was how he repaid Qing Luo. She didn't even care about Qing Luo's extravagant request. She gave up on the Saintess selection. Qing Luo didn't stop her, nor did she blame her. He didn't force her to return to the selection stage. Instead, he respected her choice. She had never done anything for Qing Luo. This time, was he going to disappoint Qing Luo again? Miao Yi's feet could no longer move. The two hands hanging by the side of his body clenched and clenched. It was as if he had gone through countless internal struggles. In the end, Miao Yi closed her eyes, clenched her fists, and turned around resolutely. She once again walked towards the direction of the selection stage, once again. Instantly, the public square was in an uproar. Numerous people were paying attention to Miao Yi's actions. At this moment, they didn't understand what Miao Yi was trying to do. Yi Qing Luo took one look and saw through Miao Yi's thoughts. Chapter 2809. Miao Yi turned her head back and saw Yi Qing Luo walking towards her. Her eyes were slightly red as her throat tightened. Qing Luo, I have no intention of forcing you to become the Saintess. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and gently placed it on Miao Yi's shoulder, so you don't have to suffer yourself. Miao Yi's lips trembled and her voice was hoarse. The Overlord, no matter if you're the sacred maiden or not, I won't let anything happen to Ah Xian. This isn't something you should consider. Yi Qing Luo interrupted her words. You becoming the sacred maiden is just a little more convenient. But. Miao Yi's voice was getting hotter and hotter. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a smile as she patted her shoulder. No buts. I don't know what happened between you and the Miao tribe's holy maiden. If you don't want to be the holy maiden, if you don't want to have anything to do with her, then don't be the holy maiden. Miao Yi's long eyelashes fluttered. Faintly, it was mixed with traces of sparkling and translucent crystals. Yi Qing Luo smiled even more warmly as she raised her hand and rubbed her head. If you have nowhere to go, there's still my place. The World Mercenary Group needs a Miao Gu genius. Yi Qing Luo's voice wasn't soft at all. His words were clearly transmitted to the elders on the selection platform. The elders panicked. Miss Yi, this won't do. This is our Miao tribe's genius. You can't take it away. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she squinted at that elder with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Now it's not me who wants to bring Yi away, but your Miao tribe cannot tolerate Yi. Her voice was calm and a little cold. It was hard to tell what she was feeling. The elder was rendered speechless, unable to retort at all. He anxiously looked at the elders beside him, then at Miao Ji. It had been a long time since a Miao Gu genius had appeared in their Miao tribe. It wasn't easy for a genius to be born. How could they bear to let her go? How could they bear to let her join a mercenary group with her talent? However, the Saintess refused to budge. They didn't know what to say to make Miao Yi stay. Let's go. Seeing that the elders had all quietened down, Yiqing Luo gave a cold laugh as she grabbed Miao Yi's arm and walked towards the direction of the seating area. The elders wanted to chase after him to stop him. But he had no stance to take. He watched helplessly as Yiqing Luo dragged Miao Yi away. Miao Yi was held for a few steps and her footsteps paused. No way, Qing Luo, I cannot give up. Yiqing Luo also stopped in her tracks and turned back to look at her. Miao Yi lowered her eyes, pursed her lips, and said in a hoarse voice, I can't just leave like this. Why? Yiqing Luo released her hand and asked softly. Miao Yi's eyelashes fluttered. There are many reasons. I've never done anything for you, but you have always encouraged me, taught me to grow, and helped me a lot. I can't ignore the poison in His Majesty's body. Who said you haven't done anything for me? Yiqing Luo bent her finger and flicked it hard on Miao Yi's forehead. That time when Miao Rongrong father and daughter duo planted the goo on Xian. If it wasn't for your timely arrival, the first person Xian saw when he opened his eyes would absolutely not be me. She curled her lips and her eyes shot towards Dmo Xian's direction. After that, he will become estranged from me, and because of the love goo, he will fall in love with another woman. Chapter 28:10. Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Yi's, unable to refute, expression as she solemnly patted her shoulder. So the reason why Xian was still able to allow me to get close to him when he was poisoned by the centrifugal goo, is all because of you. Miao Yi was speechless. What he said made so much sense that she almost believed him. The two of them lowered their voices and spoke very softly. No one could hear what they were saying. They could only see Yiqing Luo patting Miao Yi's shoulder while saying something. Miao Yi's expression was very subtle. As though he was moved by Yiqing Luo's words. The judging elder who was the closest thought that Miao Yi had agreed to join the World Mercenary Group and could no longer hold it in as he took a big step forward. No way, no way. Miss Miao, this Miao Gu genius, this elder will definitely not let her go. As he spoke, he reached out and grabbed Miao Yi's arm. His white beard fluttered in the wind. Miss Yi, no matter what, Miss Miao is a member of our Miao tribe. Even if she was not the Holy Maiden, she was the future leader of the Miao tribe. You can't take her away, you can't. With that, the judging elder pulled Miao Yi behind him. Miao Yi was still confused. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she smiled lightly. If she's not willing, I naturally won't bring her away. But... She paused for a moment and glanced in Miao Ji's direction. She was still laughing, but there was a hint of warning in her laughter. If Yi wants to leave, no one can stop me. The judging elder's face stiffened, and he pulled Miao Yi back a few steps. Then he turned around and tried to persuade her. Miss Miao, do you really want to give up everything in the Miao tribe, the place where you grew up freely, and leave your hometown? There's no need for this kind of place to grow up. Yiqing Luo said coldly. The judging elder was once again rendered speechless. The other elders of the Miao tribe also lowered their heads. They had no way to refute Yiqing Luo's words. Miao Yi's days in the Miao tribe were indeed not any days worth reminiscing. The elders were also very clear about this. After Miao Yi escaped from the Miao tribe, because of the ancient Gu King, the Miao tribe hunted him down in all sorts of ways. They even massacred an entire village for it. If they were in his shoes, they would not have a good impression of the Miao tribe either. Even if Miao Yi gave up on the Miao tribe, that was a very normal choice. All the elders lowered their heads in silence. Even the judging elder who was grabbing Miao Yi's wrist unconsciously loosened his grip in guilt. Miao Yi took a few steps back and covered her wrist. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she smiled at her. Do you want to leave the Miao tribe with me, or to prove your hard work and ability, to fight for the position of Sacred Maiden? Miao Yi was still stunned. Yiqing Luo didn't rush him. The square fell into silence once again. About the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn. The silent Miao Yi's eyelashes fluttered again, and a trace of spirit returned. She slowly fixed the focal length onto Yiqing Luo. His eyes shone with an extremely bright light. Obviously, he had made up his mind. Miao Yi said. When she spat out a word. A woman's steady and dignified voice floated from behind, instantly suppressing the entire atmosphere. When did I say that I'm going to force you to leave the Miao tribe, and not allow you to take part in the Sacred Maiden selection? It was Miao Ji. Chapter 28:11. The elders' gazes swiftly turned towards Miao Ji. Their eyes were filled with joy. Sacred Maiden had finally spoken out. Sacred Maiden had finally spoken out to retain eldest young Miss Miao. The judging elder was the first to jump out. Right. Sacred Maiden had never said anything about forcing eldest young Miss Miao to leave the Miao tribe. Miss Yi, you'd better return eldest young Miss Miao to our Miao tribe. Saying that, he grabbed Miao Yi's wrist and hurriedly pulled her back onto the selection stage. Miao Yi. She really didn't know since when did she become so popular. Standing on the selection stage again, she faced Miao Ji once again. Miao Yi's feelings were somewhat complicated. Her brows creased as she stared at Miao Ji's expressionless face for some time. The two of them didn't speak to break the silence. Miao Yi's brows creased even tighter as she turned her gaze towards Yiqing Luo, who was below the selection stage. But she saw that Yiqing Luo had already turned around and returned to Dmo Xian's side. Noticing her delivery of the gaze, Yiqing Luo raised her eyes as she gave her a mischievous smile. Miao Yi's pupils quivered. She instantly understood. Actually, Yiqing Luo had long seen through her unwillingness. She saw that she wanted to prove her own strength. She saw that she wasn't willing to give up the Sacred Maiden's position. Yiqing Luo specially walked out, not because she really wanted to bring her away from the Miao tribe. But she was telling her to choose a path that she really wanted to walk on. Miao Yi's eyes turned red once again. Her eyelashes were wet. The warmth in her heart was like a great courage, encouraging her. Miao Yi's eyes gradually became resolute. There was no longer a hint of confusion or compromise. Sacred Maiden. She opened her mouth again. Her voice was as calm as water, neither fast nor slow. I'm sorry for misunderstanding you. Miao Ji, who had been calm all this while, immediately froze when she heard these words. Miao Ji's hand froze on the table. Her eyes stared at Miao Yi without blinking. As though she couldn't believe that Miao Yi would actually apologize to her. I'm sorry. Perhaps I've misunderstood you too deeply, so whenever you appear, I feel like you're targeting me. Miao Yi's next sentence extinguished the fire in Miao Ji's heart. The light in Miao Ji's eyes gradually dimmed. Miao Yi's tone was still calm. Since the Holy Maiden does not intend to use her power for personal gain, then, what is the deeper meaning behind the Holy Maiden selection ceremony? Miao Ji's eyes flickered dimly. The elders began to feel uneasy again. They really couldn't understand the complicated relationship between the Saintess and the Saintess candidate. Why was it so tense? The Saintess did not speak. The Saintess candidate did not say anything. They didn't know what to say. Could it be that he had to quietly wait for the strange atmosphere between the two of them to subside? Even if they could wait, the guests participating in the Saintess selection ceremony would not wait. His heart was filled with apprehension. Miao Ji finally opened her mouth. I'm here to meet the future Sacred Maiden of Miao tribe, so that I can ascend to the upper realm without worry. She paused for a long time before saying the last 5 words. Miao Yi's gaze also had some changes. After floating for a moment, everything returned to calmness. In her eyes, there was a trace of ridicule. Chapter 28:12. Whether you go to the upper realm or not, it has nothing to do with me. Miao Yi interrupted Miao Ji's explanation. Since you want to see the future Holy Maiden of the Miao tribe, now that you have seen her, can you leave? Miao Ji suddenly stood up, her eyes were filled with hurt and helplessness. I don't have much time left. Why do you keep me at a distance? Miao Yi clenched her fists, her slender fingers turned white. But she still said, it doesn't matter. Miao Ji looked at Miao Yi's expressionless face and slowly sat back on the wooden chair. She let out a long sigh and closed her eyes weakly. She said word by word, since you said that I am making things difficult for you. Well, you just have to answer my last question. You will be the only Holy Maiden candidate in the selection of the Holy Maiden. The elders held their breaths. The last question of the Holy Maiden? The way to contract the ancient Gu King? This question, even if it was the saintess herself, she would not be able to answer it. The Holy Maiden seemed to treat Miao Yi like an elder looking at a junior. Shouldn't she support Miao Yi to become the Holy Maiden? How could she use this question to block Miao Yi's way? Just when the elders were in a dilemma. Miao Ji looked at Miao Shuadan and Miao Jilian. Or, you two can answer. We don't know. The two Holy Maiden candidates trembled and shook their heads. They had heard about the existence of the ancient Gu King through hearsay. They were wondering if there was an ancient Gu King in the Miao tribe. How could they know the way to contract the ancient Gu King? Miao Ji raised her eyebrows. Oh. That means you don't want to enter the last round? Miao Shuadan and Miao Jilian were speechless. That was what they thought. Miao Ji had extinguished all their hopes. Miao Ji saw that they did not speak, so she looked at Miao Yi again. There was a strange light in her eyes. What about you? Do you want to enter the last round? Miao Yi frowned. She said one word. She bit her lower lip. The expression on his face was dark and gloomy. Miao Ji didn't give her time to think. She straightened up slightly and said, What? Is this a difficult question to answer? When Miao Ji said this, his eyes were fixed on Miao Yi's expression. He did not want to miss the slightest change in Miao Yi's expression. If you want to, then answer the question I just asked. If you can answer, you pass. If you can't, you'll be eliminated. She continued, It's just a matter of whether you can answer it or not. Miao Yi clenched her fists and suddenly laughed softly. Yeah, it's just two choices. After laughing, Miao Yi raised her head, and the corners of her mouth curled into a mocking smile. Then, he slowly said word by word, There's only one way to form a contract with the ancient Gu King. You have to get the ancient Gu King's recognition, withstand the Gu poison of the ancient Gu King entering your body, and let the ancient Gu King suck your blood to form a contract. The crowd was in an uproar. Was this how the ancient Gu King contracted? It sounded like the contract was very simple. Of course, the people of the Miao tribe knew it very well. If the contract method was used on ordinary Gu poison. Chapter 28:13. But if the contracted partner was the ancient venomous worm king, it was simply impossible. The ancient venomous worm king was the king of the venomous worms that had existed since ancient times. To obtain the recognition of the ancient venomous worm king, it was simply a fantasy. Moreover, the ancient venomous worm king was able to become the leader of the venomous worms was because the ancient venomous worm king's own toxicity could instantly kill all the venomous worms in the world. Such toxicity, no one's body could withstand it. Not to mention letting the ancient venomous worm kings suck their own blood essence. So who could prove? Was Miao Yi's reply true or false? All right. Just as the crowd was discussing, Miao Ji spat out a word. She slowly stood up and looked at Miao Yi's stubborn and elegant face as a gratified smile surfaced on her face. Miao Yi, congratulations on becoming the last sacred maiden candidate. The elders had just finished Miao Ji's words. They clapped excitedly. The Miao tribesmen were in an uproar. Some were happy for Miao Yi. Some doubted Miao Yi. The entire public square became extremely lively at this moment. All sorts of discussions were incessant. Nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, Yi Qing Luo, who was thinking of ways to take advantage of a man, squinted her eyes as she looked at everything in front of her. It could be said that it was within her expectations. Her feeling was right. This Miao tribe's sacred maiden indeed had complicated feelings towards Miao Yi. If she didn't guess wrongly, the relationship between these two was definitely not simple. Moreover, a long time ago, their relationship was absolutely very close. Miao Ji's appearance, as well as the questions she raised. It looked as though she was making things difficult for Miao Yi. It looked as though she was forcing Miao Yi. It looked as though she was making things difficult for Miao Yi. But in actual fact, she was paving the way for Miao Yi. When Miao Yi escaped from the Miao tribe, she brought the ancient venomous worm king away. This matter was not a secret among the Miao tribe's upper echelons. If Miao Yi intentionally hid it, it would make those tribesmen feel that Miao Yi had ulterior motives towards the Miao tribe. He might as well bring this matter up in the open. Moreover, if the news of Miao Yi and the ancient venomous worm king's contract was spread, it would only strengthen Miao Yi's position in the Miao tribe. Miao tribe leader, Miao tribe holy maiden, these two positions were unshakable. Why, aren't you excited to rush up the stage and drag your little sister away? Dmo Xian looked down at the satisfied young lady in his arms. If it was a normal day, when they saw their own sisters being wronged or threatened, they would not be able to control themselves. Yiqing Luo had already rushed up and stood out bravely. At this moment, she was actually nestled in his arms obediently. That was strange. I'm not blind. Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him and her little hand was on his firm abs as she pinched it fiercely. I can tell that sacred maiden is doing this for Yi's own good. As she spoke, she restlessly adjusted her position in his arms. Her hands exerted more force on his waist, moving up and down. The sacred maiden must be trying to stabilize Yi's position in the Miao tribe before she ascends to the upper realm. She intends to hand over everything in the Miao tribe to Yi alone. Oh. Dmo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes as a dangerous emotion started to spread beneath his eyes. His palms suddenly flipped over as he fiercely clasped the soft little hand that was caressing around his waist. The young lady's soft skin felt warm and soft to the touch. His eyes started to darken. Chapter 28:14. I'm not interested in the Miao tribe's matter. The man's hoarse voice was melodious and filled with magnetism, seducing her tightly. You're so restless and trying to seduce me. Are you so impatient that you want me to sleep with you? His fingers were slightly calloused and the touch on her face was extremely gentle. Yiqing Luo's face revealed a trace of satisfaction, like a cat's expression. The breath she breathed out was scorching hot and tempting. Her pink lips parted slightly as she laughed softly. Just a few touches and the overlord reacted? Is the overlord craving for me too much or is it too easy to react? Perhaps it was the man's fingertips that caressed her so comfortably. When the young lady spoke, there was a trace of satisfaction in her murmur. The ending sound rose up, extremely devilish. Like a seductive little hook. Bit by bit, it hooked a certain part of her heart. Dmo Xian's pupils suddenly contracted. Suddenly, a hand that was gently caressing her face pinched her chin. The man bent down and got closer to her. But he didn't kiss her. Just that the close distance was filled with danger. His hoarse voice warned, Yiqing Luo, don't try to provoke me. Dmo Xian's 5 fingers were a little strong. So strong that her chin felt a little painful. Yiqing Luo frowned as she endured the pain on her chin and forcefully pulled out an evil smile. Her charming eyes curved. Overlord, are you angry because I've hit the mark? Dmo Xian's eyes were still flickering as he stared at Yiqing Luo's face without blinking. After some time, he loosened his 5 fingers. He also shifted his line of sight away. He just sat on the soft cushion, his long legs half bent as his deep and gloomy eyes stared ahead. As though he didn't want to say another word to Yiqing Luo. Such an attitude made Yiqing Luo's mood improve greatly. He didn't deny it. That proved that she had indeed hit the mark on his thoughts. Under the condition of being poisoned by the centrifugal worm, he could still have such a strong reaction towards her. It was enough to prove how important she was in Dmo Xian's heart. Even if it was the centrifugal worm. It would absolutely not be able to separate their hearts. No matter what the Miao tribesmen thought. The Saintess had personally spoken. He personally confirmed that Miao Yi's answer was completely correct. The last candidate to become the Holy Maiden was Miao Yi. Tomorrow, he would go to the ancient Gu King's land to carry out the Gu King's recognition ceremony. Soon after, about the time it took to drink a cup of tea. Today's selection ceremony was officially over. The crowd dispersed one after another. Miao Yi walked off the stage without looking back. The judging elder immediately caught up to her. Miss Miao, wait. The other elders also followed closely behind. Miao Yi was surrounded by a few elders. Perhaps it was because her mood had been affected, but there was not a hint of a smile on her face. Miss Miao, tomorrow is the recognition ceremony of the King of Venomous Worms. When will you? The fourth elder stammered, as if he was choosing his words carefully. The other elders also looked at Miao Yi with hopeful expressions. They all knew. Back then, Miao Yi had taken the ancient Gu King and escaped from the Miao tribe. Now, Miao Yi had returned to the Miao tribe. She had never explained anything about the ancient Gu King from the beginning to the end. The ancient Gu King was the lifeline of the Miao tribe. What did Miao Yi do when she brought the ancient Gu King away? Was the ancient Gu King still with Miao Yi? Chapter 28:15. A calm and dignified voice rang out. The white-robed elder who had been standing beside Miao Ji stroked his white beard and walked out. As soon as the old man spoke, the surrounding elders quietened down. All of them stood up straight. His brows were filled with respect. The white-robed elder smiled kindly and said, "The recognition ceremony of the ancient Gu King will be held tomorrow. Send the ancient Gu King back to the place of the King of Venomous Worms and we'll talk about it after the ceremony. What do you think?" His tone was also very gentle. He did not force Miao Yi to hand over the ancient Gu King. Miao Yi looked up at the white-robed elder and chuckled, "Are you afraid that I won't return the ancient Gu King to the Miao tribe?" The white-robed elder, who was the great elder of the Miao tribe, smiled like a Maitreya Buddha and said, What are you talking about? You are the future leader of the Miao tribe and the only candidate for the Saintess. Everything in the Miao tribe will be yours, including the ancient Gu King. If that's the case, you don't have to ask any more questions." Miao Yi did not give face to the great elder and rejected him directly. "The ancient Gu King is with me. I will invite him out tomorrow." After saying that, he pushed aside the elders surrounding him and walked down the selection stage. The few elders were stunned on the spot. The fourth elder looked displeased and said, "Isn't Miss Miao too arrogant? She seems to be hostile towards us." The fifth elder frowned and said worriedly, "If Miss Miao refuses to accept us, it will not be good for the future of the Miao tribe." The other elders looked at each other and lowered their heads in silence. "Give her some time and she will believe in your loyalty to the Miao tribe." Miao Ji sighed as she watched Miao Yi leave. She stood up and a hint of melancholy appeared on her gentle face. "Rest assured, Lady Holy Maiden, we will definitely assist young Miss Miao." Seeing the Holy Maiden speak, the elders immediately raised their hands and placed them on their shoulders in salute. Miao Ji smiled and said, "Yi is too stubborn. When I ascend to the upper realm in the future, I will have to ask you to take good care of Yi." Miao Ji's words were also indirectly telling the elders. Miao Yi indeed had a close relationship with her. And she, indeed, supported Miao Yi. The few elders hurriedly lowered their heads and responded in unison. Miao Ji thanked him and walked down the stage. Great Elder Miao immediately followed closely behind. Miao Ji stopped in her tracks and raised her hand to stop Great Elder Miao from following her. She said calmly, "This Saintess still has matters to attend to." Great Elder Miao froze for a moment before stopping in his tracks. Miao Ji continued walking forward. The direction she was heading towards was not the way back. Instead, in the seats, the first row on the right. Miao Ji walked at a steady pace. He had barely taken a few steps when he was surrounded by a few people dressed in luxurious clothes. Standing at the very front was the pitiful Miao Zhilian, who was crying like a pear blossom in the rain. The people behind him were Miao Zhilian's parents and elders. "Saintess, please," Miao Zhilian's sobbing voice sounded aggrieved. However, Miao Zhilian did not have time to finish her words. Miao Zhi glanced at her indifferently. Her gaze was very indifferent. It was just a glance, but Miao Zhilian's tears welled up in her eyes and could not fall. This saintess hates people who don't keep their promises. Since you agreed to the bet, then bear the consequences yourself. Chapter 28:16. Miao Zhilian's face was ashen as she laid limply on the ground. She covered her face as tears gushed out. She heard her mother's grumbling voice, "I told you, Sacred Maiden and that slut's relationship is not ordinary, so what's the use of begging Sacred Maiden? Our family's face has been thrown away by you. Cry, 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 you only know how to cry. What's the use of raising you up and nurturing you so painstakingly? You don't have any foresight at all." Her father berated her furiously. Miao Zhilian felt her ears buzzing as her eyes turned black. Under this endless criticism and grumbling, she fainted. At the same time, Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she looked at Miao Yi, who was walking towards the Sacred Maiden's candidate room. She could tell that Miao Yi was feeling down. She stood up and chased after her. An arm stretched out. It directly pulled her into his embrace. The man's elegant sandalwood scent entered her nostrils. History was always shockingly similar. Yiqing Luo had learned her lesson this time as she conserved her energy and didn't struggle. "I'm only going over to take a look at her. When her emotions have stabilized, I'll be back." The man didn't give any response after she finished her words. The hand which was on her waist didn't move at all. Yiqing Luo was helpless as she followed his hand and found a comfortable position in his arms. Then, "Overlord, will you go with me?" Dmo Xian still didn't reply. His long arm tightened around her waist. He lowered his head and planted his lips on her earlobe. His voice was low and husky, extremely sexy. "Have you forgotten something?" "Forgotten what?" Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes blankly. Above her head floated the man's low husky laughter. But this laughter, Yiqing Luo inexplicably sensed something. A dangerous aura. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled as she instinctively sensed danger and wanted to push the man away. But at the next moment, the man directly opened his mouth and bit her earlobe. Yiqing Luo moaned as her little hand gripped the man's robe tightly. "You! What are you doing?" Yiqing Luo's face was instantly dyed red. She really wanted to break free from the man's restraint. This restraint seemed to have a bad taste as it tempted her. Especially when the man bit her earlobe. She was unable to control the numbness that she felt as if she had been electrocuted. Her mind went blank for a moment. He felt as if all the energy in his body had been sucked dry. His heart was thumping, beating faster and faster. It was as if he couldn't control it at all. Before the ceremony, someone seemed to have promised this lord something. Dmo Xian grabbed the back of her head, preventing her from evading. His teeth were still biting on Yiqing Luo's earlobe. As he spoke, his warm breath constantly drilled into her ears. Yiqing Luo's petite body kept trembling. Her whole body was limp, and her eyes were wet with tears. She was about to go crazy from the torture. Her head was spinning. What did I promise you? Do whatever I want with you, including sleeping with you." Dmo Xian's voice was low and he sounded very happy. The young lady's innocent and honest response made Dmo Xian's mood improve greatly. His big palm clasped Yiqing Luo's waist tightly as he let go of her ear and laughed. "This lord has already done what I promised you. Next, it's time to collect the repayment." Yiqing Luo struggled a little. We can talk about it later. This lord has no patience." Dmo Xian rejected decisively. Chapter 28:17. No. Dmo Xian still rejected. "Yiqing Luo, Damn it, could they still have a pleasant conversation? After a moment of confrontation, Yiqing Luo was defeated. Then what do you want? Go back to the room, deal with you. Dmo Xian replied very decisively. Clearly, these words sounded very normal. But when it came out from Dmo Xian's mouth, it inexplicably carried a kind of seductive, colorful meaning. Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth, stretched out her hand and pinched the man's tight waist. I lose to you. I'll go with you and let you deal with me, all right? Saying that, she twisted her little body and turned her head to the side in a muffled voice, expressing that she was extremely angry now. While she was angry, Yiqing Luo didn't forget to let Chi out. Then she gave Chi the instruction to accompany Miao Yi. Chi was such a small ball and looked adorable. It should make Miao Yi feel better. Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes, looking at Chi's lightning-fast figure. His voice was deep. I can't tell that this lord's woman is not a simple person. Yiqing Luo gloomily shook her head and snorted. It's good that you know, so. Overlord, what you need to do is to hug my thigh and listen to me obediently. The young lady's voice was sullen and sundra, which made Dmo Xian's gaze became gentler. He laughed hoarsely, his rosy lips were even more gorgeous. This suggestion is not bad, but let this lord try first, to see if this thigh of yours is good enough. While speaking, he had already grabbed the young lady's waist and carried her in his arms. There were too many people watching the show. He loved to tease the young lady in his arms. And he didn't have the bad taste of letting others watch the show. Especially, he didn't want anyone to see the shy young lady. Dmo Xian carried Yiqing Luo and stood up. An anxious voice was heard from behind. Overlord, please hold on. It was accompanied by urgent footsteps. Dmo Xian pretended not to hear it as he walked forward. Yiqing Luo could tell that it was Miao Ji's voice. Thinking of Miao Yi, she tugged Dmo Xian's collar. It's sacred maiden, put me down. Dmo Xian pursed his lips, apparently displeased. However, he still stopped in his tracks. Miao Ji happened to catch up with them. She took a look at the young lady in Dmo Xian's arms and hung her head down awkwardly. Miss Yi, I have something to tell you. Do you have the time? Yes. No. Two voices spoke at the same time. Yiqing Luo glared at him furiously. Dmo Xian, stop fooling around. If the holy maiden is looking for me, she must have something important to do. Don't tell me this lord's matter is not important. Dmo Xian sneered. Miao Ji felt even more embarrassed, looking at the way the overlord was hugging Yiqing Luo. He was looking at the atmosphere between the two of them. Chapter 28:18. Hearing the young lady's serious tone, Dmo Xian's brows rose slightly, especially after hearing the young lady's serious words. Unknowingly, a smile appeared in his eyes. Yiqing Luo leaned close to his ear and couldn't see his expression. But Miao Ji could see it clearly. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. The overlord was like a madman, pampering a young lady named Yiqing Luo and pampering her dearly. From the looks of it now, it was indeed true. Everyone could see that. The relationship between the two of them was really good, without any fake feelings. When Yiqing Luo moved her little head away, she raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian solemnly. The man had already adjusted the emotions in his eyes. He looked noble and indifferent, like an ascetic young master. Dmo Xian pursed his thin lips as he raised his slender fingers and flicked fiercely on Yiqing Luo's forehead. His voice was deep as he said slowly, all right. Yiqing Luo. Such a straightforward reply. Why did it make her feel as though she had fallen into a wolf's pit? She felt that Dmo Xian had been rejecting her suggestions in various ways, just to tempt her to say this sentence. No matter what. After hearing Dmo Xian finally nodding his head in agreement, Miao Ji couldn't wait any longer as she invited the both of them to Sacred Maiden's courtyard. Sacred Maiden's status in the Miao tribe was extremely high. Because of that, the place where she stayed was the best location in the entire Miao tribe. And she had her own courtyard, far away from the other tribesmen. Outside the Sacred Maiden's courtyard was a huge nursery. The things planted in the nursery made Yi Qing Luo curious. Those seedlings weren't the usual emerald green, but a kind of almost blood red. It looked extremely horrifying. Miao Ji took a look at the nursery as her lips curled. These are the food for the goo worms, used to nurture adult goo worms. The three of them walked past the nursery and entered the courtyard. It was another huge, lush garden like a forest. There was only one small path for people to pass through. On both sides of the small path, there were white hemp ropes which formed into a large net, blocking everything tightly. Through the web-like hemp rope, Yi Qing Luo could see that the lush garden was densely packed with thousands of worms, crawling and squirming. Be careful. Don't touch the insect webs on both sides. Miao Ji reminded them gently, without any airs of a saintess. I'm sorry for making you come to such a dangerous place. It's just that I don't want a fourth person to know what I want to tell you. It's all right. Yi Qing Luo's gaze swept past those wriggling various goo worms. It's not bad to come here to broaden my horizons. As Yi Qing Luo was speaking, her eyes had been studying the worm web, on how it prevented those goo worms from crawling out. He did not pay attention to his feet for a moment. He stepped on a branch that had spread out from the worm web. Yi Qing Luo staggered as she fell forward. No matter how fast her reaction was. Unfortunately, this small path was too narrow. She didn't have anything to hold on to, and she was even more worried that she would pull down the surrounding insect webs. He thought that he would fall to the ground. However, in the next instant, Yi Qing Luo felt a tightness around her waist. Immediately, the scent of a man's sandalwood scent wafted over. She crashed into Dmo Xian's chest. The two of them stabilized their footsteps. Yi Qing Luo heaved a sigh of relief as she raised her head and was just about to express her thanks. Chapter 28:19. Yi Qing Luo's heart tightened as she speedily withdrew from Dmo Xian's embrace. Ah Xian, what's wrong with you? Where do you feel uncomfortable? Dmo Xian did not answer. He leaned against the insect web behind him, his body stiff and motionless. Are you guys okay? Miao Ji quickly turned around and walked over. When she saw Dmo Xian's back leaning against the insect web, she stretched out her hand, wanting to support him. These insect webs are made from medicinal herbs which are the nemesis of goo worms. They are very sturdy and won't be damaged by collisions. It doesn't matter even if someone touches these insect webs as it won't cause any harm to the body. But Miao Ji's hand had yet to touch Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian had already braced his body and dodged to the side. He dodged. Dmo Xian's tall and sturdy body staggered and swayed. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo's quick reflexes to support him, he would probably be unable to stand steadily. Sacred Maiden, this insect web, after touching it, is there really no effect? Yi Qing Luo wrapped her arms around Dmo Xian's tall body, pulling him away from the insect web. Her expression was extremely ugly and her eyes were covered in frost. Miao Ji furrowed her brows and said with certainty, I can confirm that I made these insect webs with my own hands. There's no mistake. After a pause, Miao Ji looked at the overlord, whose huge body was pressing on top of the young girl. A trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. Unless the overlord is, where is the nearest room in the courtyard? Go there now. There seems to be something wrong with Ah Xian's body. Yi Qing Luo interrupted Miao Ji's words as she placed all her attention on Dmo Xian. The man on top of her felt as if his body was on fire and extremely hot. His breathing was also very heavy. Come with me. Miao Ji also knew that Dmo Xian wasn't willing to let anyone other than Yi Qing Luo touch him, so she quickly led the way. Yi Qing Luo supported the man, or more accurately, she carried the man. Dmo Xian's consciousness was obviously no longer conscious. His tall body and his strength were almost completely pressed down on her. Yi Qing Luo knew that her strength was definitely not small. Casually grabbing a person's neck and lifting them up was also a very easy thing to do. But when he was carrying Dmo Xian, she only felt, he was almost overwhelmed to the point of suffocation. She carried the man and followed Miao Ji for about the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. After passing through the garden filled with insect webs, there was a row of rooms on the right. Miao Ji asked Yi Qing Luo to help Dmo Xian to lie on the bed. Can you remove the overlord's mask? Yi Qing Luo's fingers tightened as she bent down and removed the mask from Dmo Xian's face. That peerless face was reflected in her eyes. However, this usually expressionless face was now filled with emotions. At this moment, his face was as pale as paper. His brows were tightly knitted together as if he was in great pain. Looking at the man's tightly knitted brows, Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped. Little Luo, the man on the bed called out subconsciously. His hoarse voice was filled with immense pain. Yi Qing Luo's eyes turned sour when she heard that call. She squatted by the bed and reached out to hold the man's hand, pressing it against her cheek. Ah, Xian, I'm here. Tell me if you're feeling unwell. Yi Qing Luo had yet to finish her words of consolation. Suddenly, her shoulder was pressed down by a palm. Miao Ji's solemn voice floated over her head. Don't move, let me take a look. Chapter 28-20. Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she quickly rolled up Dmo Xian's wide sleeves. The moment her gaze touched the man's wrist, Yi Qing Luo's throat tightened as her pupils unconsciously enlarged. She saw. On the man's wrist, there was a red line, like a blood thread, extending from his palm to his wrist. On one look, it was as though Dmo Xian's hand had split open with a cut. It was extremely ghastly. Yi Qing Luo could clearly see that the line of blood was still spreading towards his arm, although the speed was very slow. But Yi Qing Luo could determine that this line of blood would spread to his shoulder in less than a joss stick's time. What is this? Yi Qing Luo glanced sideways as she looked at Miao Ji. Indeed. I guessed correctly. Miao Ji's eyes sunk when she saw that red line. There are goo worms in Dmo Xian's body, and it's an extremely insidious poison, right? It wasn't a big deal for a normal person to touch the worm web. But Dmo Xian had the love and centrifugal worm in his body. At the moment when he touched the worm web, the medicinal effect of the goo worm's nemesis flowed through the skin and into Dmo Xian's body. The love and centrifugal worm would be stimulated by this medicinal effect at the same time. Hearing Miao Ji's explanation, Yi Qing Luo's heart tightened. Then is there any way to alleviate it? I'll light a stalk of tranquilizer to temporarily let the goo worms in Dmo Xian's body settle down first. Miao Ji took out an incense burner from the side and placed it by the bedside. Yi Qing Luo took a look. That was a square-shaped incense block and the smell was very strange. She took a look at Miao Ji. Although she was sure that Miao Ji cared about Miao Yi a lot, and would not have any ill intentions towards her and Dmo Xian. But after all, regarding the art of goo worms, it was something she wasn't good at, so she couldn't fully trust it. Yi Qing Luo asked Old Man Song in her consciousness. You lass, you're really reckless. Knowing that Dmo Xian's body was implanted with love and centrifugal worm, you still let him come to this place full of goo worms. After Old Man Song was awakened by Yi Qing Luo, he sensed the surrounding atmosphere and couldn't help but mumbled a few words. Old Man Song's consciousness swept towards the direction of the goo worm incense. That is an ordinary incense. It can be used to suppress the goo worms in Dmo Xian's body. He watched as Miao Ji lit the incense and placed it beside the bed. Yi Qing Luo was just about to ask about Dmo Xian's situation. Miao Ji's gaze was fixed on her. There's a soul searching for Ngongxiang. It's you? Whose soul do you carry with you? As soon as she said that, she quickly retracted her gaze and realized something. She smiled apologetically and said, Sorry, I shouldn't have asked that. She lowered her eyes, and her face was as gentle as water. You and I have just met, and the person who has been poisoned is a venerable sovereign. It's reasonable for you to be wary of me. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes as she silently tried to guess the meaning behind Miao Ji's words. Why could Miao Ji sense Old Man Song's existence? Goo worms don't necessarily have to be used to control people. There are also goo worms that specialize in controlling souls. There is a soul goo here that can sense my presence. Old Man Song was also shocked. The saintess of the Miao Goo clan is indeed an existence that can ascend to the upper realm. She even knows how to nurture things like soul goo. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips as her eyes fixed on Miao Ji. Chapter 28-21. I know, you want to talk to me about Yi. Yi Qing Luo retracted her gaze from Miao Ji and looked back at the man lying on the bed as her voice was very soft. Your relationship with Yi, if I didn't guess wrongly, even if you're not mother and daughter, but you were once as close as mother and daughter. As Yi Qing Luo said that, she stretched out her hand again and held Dmo Xian's scorching hot palm. After the incense was ignited, Dmo Xian's tightly knitted brows eased slightly. Only, the man's temperature was unable to cool down for a long time. She hoped that Dmo Xian could feel that she was by his side, using her willpower to withstand the stimulation of the love and centrifugal worm. Am I very obvious? Miao Ji gave a bitter smile behind her. Yi's attitude towards me is so cold. How can you still tell our relationship? Yi Qing Luo didn't look at her as her voice was slightly gloomy. The onlooker sees the game more clearly. I can tell that Yi isn't cold towards you, but she can't accept you appearing as the sacred lady. Miao Ji was stunned as though her thoughts were exposed as she lowered her eyelids. After some time, she sighed softly as a sliver of melancholy and uneasiness flashed in her eyes. Miss Yi, putting aside the sacred lady's identity, can I ask you for a favor as a senior? Yi Qing Luo looked at her sideways. Miao Ji's lips moved. Yi trusts you very much, I hope. You can help me to restore the relationship between me and Yi. I don't want to leave Nirvana realm with any regrets. Seeing Miao Yi return to the Miao tribe and shed away the immaturity and naivety from before, she had become able to take charge. Miao Ji's heart was gratified and excited, but also melancholy and helpless. Melancholy, she had never participated in Miao Yi's changes. But she was unable to participate in Miao Yi's changes. Restore the relationship? Yi Qing Luo found it funny as she raised her brows. Yi obviously doesn't hold any hope towards you. Since you're about to leave Nirvana realm, why do you need to give her unnecessary hope before you leave and increase her sadness? I know I let her down in the past, but I'm Yi's only family in this world. I don't want her to feel that she has no one to worry about in this world other than the two of you. Miao Ji's eyes were complicated. Moreover, Yi has become the Miao tribe's holy maiden. 50 years later, she will be able to ascend to the upper realm. I will be waiting for her there. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips and didn't reply immediately. Miao Ji's feelings for Miao Yi did not seem fake. Moreover, Miao Ji was right. Except for the dying Miao Yixiong, Miao Ji was Miao Yi's only family. Miao Yi indeed had a deep grudge against Miao Ji. However, if he really didn't care about Miao Ji, why would he pay attention to her attitude? Pay attention to Miao Ji's emotions. Furthermore, because of Miao Ji, he even attempted to give up on the saintess selection. If he really didn't care, that way, his emotions wouldn't be affected. If you can help me and calm Yi down so that we can meet and talk about the venomous insect poison in Di Zun's body, I can help. Miao Ji saw that Yi Qing Luo wasn't speaking for a long time and her hands were tightly clasped together, as her voice sounded a little bitter. Apparently, she didn't want to use this kind of transaction method to beg Yi Qing Luo for help. But she had no other choice. Chapter 28-22. Are you sure you can cure Xian? Yi Qing Luo followed Miao Ji's words and continued. Not only to give Miao Ji a way out. Most importantly, Dmo Xian's poison could be cured as soon as possible. When Miao Yi became the Sacred Maiden, she would go to the Sacred Maiden Pavilion to find the cure. It would take too long. Moreover, Long Yunjian was still waiting for her to bring Miao Yi back to suppress the poison in his body. If Miao Ji could cure Dmo Xian in advance, time would be much more relaxed. But facing Yi Qing Luo's hopeful gaze, Miao Ji's face revealed an obvious guilty expression. I'm sorry, cure. I can't do it. Yi Qing Luo's heart, which had been lifted up, felt as though it was being strangled by something fiercely as her throat tightened. Can't do it? Miao Ji's sacred maiden said she couldn't cure Xian. Meaning, the poison in Xian's body, even the sacred maiden couldn't cure it? No, don't misunderstand. Seeing Yi Qing Luo's exquisite face turning pale in an instant as her eyes widened in shock in her lifeless look, Miao Ji immediately opened her mouth to explain. What I mean is not that the Overlord's poison can't be cured, but I can't personally cure the Overlord's poison. This time round, Miao Ji was too embarrassed to interrupt her as she spoke swiftly. I don't know what the poison in the Overlord's body is, nor do I know what method was used to implant it into the Overlord's body. From the Overlord's intense projection of the worm web, to the point that even a powerful Overlord is unable to control the poison, I can conclude that the poison in the Overlord's body is not simple. As she said that, her gaze fell onto Dmo Xian. That revealed half of his arm. The red blood lines which kept spreading had stopped at his wrist and didn't spread any further. She sighed softly. Such a complicated poison, the method to cure it is also very complicated. I don't have much time left in Nirvana realm, so I really have no way to cure the Overlord. Then, Yi Qing Luo's throat moved, and after she spat out a word, she felt her throat tightening. After Yi becomes the sacred maiden, I will tell her the method. Miao Ji looked at the young lady whose face was gradually regaining its color. I knew Yi's innate talent since she was born, so if I pass it to her, she will definitely do better than me. Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes. She looked at the man on the bed quietly. And Zhongxiang had already played its role. The painful expression on the man's face eased up a lot. His tightly furrowed and twisted brows slowly smoothed out. Her fingertips slowly probed towards Dmo Xian's wrist. When it touched that line of blood, the protruding sensation made her slightly startled. This bloodline seemed to have grown out from Dmo Xian's body. It felt very strange to the touch. Goosebumps rose all over her body. However, it was fortunate that he was able to. This line of blood did not seem to have any intention of continuing to spread. Otherwise, she really didn't know what would happen when the bloodline spread to her shoulders, or even her head. Looks like she wanted to persuade Miao Yi to give Miao Ji a chance to resolve the misunderstanding. It was not only because of Miao Yi, but also because she cared about Miao Ji. If he wanted to cure Dmo Xian earlier, Miao Ji had to get along with Miao Yi peacefully. Miao Yi also had to learn the method of curing the goo from Miao Ji seriously. Chapter 28-23. Miao Ji's expression changed slightly. She clenched her fists even tighter. Her fingertips turned white, with blue veins popping out. Between his eyes, there was a thin layer of mist. Yi Qing Luo didn't rush her, quietly letting her immerse herself in her own thoughts and memories of the past. After a long time, Miao Ji closed her eyes and slowly opened her mouth. Mixed with a sigh, it was filled with extreme bitterness. Miao Ji and Miao Yi's relationship was as Yi Qing Luo expected. Not a mother and daughter relationship. But they were indeed like mother and daughter. Miao Ji was Miao Yi's biological mother, Miao Yuan's biological sister, which was also Miao Yi's aunt. But to put it more accurately, Miao Ji should be considered as Miao Yi's master. Most of Miao Yi's witchcraft was taught by Miao Ji. Miao Yi's biological mother wasn't a Miao clansman, but was saved by Miao Yixiong when he was outside, rushing about for the development of the Miao tribe. Miao Yuan and Miao Ji were brought into the Miao tribe by Miao Yixiong. Their names were also given by Miao Yixiong. Their days in the Miao tribe were not easy for the two sisters. Because the Miao clansmen were too united. They were not willing to acknowledge them who came from other tribes. Because of this, when Miao Yuan and Miao Yixiong fell in love and became pregnant. None of the Miao clansmen acknowledged Miao Yuan's identity as the clan leader's wife. Of course, Miao Yixiong was only interested in Miao Yuan's beauty, to have a taste and play. The woman whom Miao Yixiong wanted to marry was naturally a woman who could help him stabilize his position as the clan leader. To him, Miao Yuan was just a plaything. These words, Miao Ji persuaded Miao Yuan. But Miao Yuan deeply loved this hero who saved her, and didn't believe her sister's words. With the child in her belly, she looked forward to her hero marrying her. But, what Miao Yuan waited for, was not Miao Yixiong's sedan chair. But Miao Yixiong's chosen wife, with the same big belly, came to the door with her head held high. She claimed that she was under Miao Yixiong's order to abort the bastard in Miao Yuan's belly. The reason for the abort. It was to let the child in her belly become the legitimate eldest miss of the Miao tribe. How could Miao Yuan be willing to submit? The two sisters accidentally entered the land of the ancient Gu king when they were trying to escape. Coincidentally, the ancient Gu king was molting and accepting a new life. He heard that Miao Yuan and Miao Ji had entered the land of the ancient Gu king. Miao Yixiong and the elders hurried over. Miao Yuan was so nervous that his stomach bumped into King of Venomous Worm's half-molted shell. The sharp shell cut through the skin on Miao Yuan's stomach. A drop of blood entered Gu King's body through the half-molted shell. Great Elder Miao saw this scene unfold before his eyes. The Gu King, who had sucked in the blood from Miao Yuan's stomach, was not agitated at all. Moreover, Miao Yuan was not corroded by the poison of the Gu King. Great Elder Miao immediately decided that the child in Miao Yuan's womb was recognized by the ancient Gu King and was the only direct descendant of the Miao tribe. Madame Miao's face instantly turned pale. Madame Miao was also very powerful in the Miao tribe. However, no one dared to act rashly against a child recognized by the ancient Gu King. In the end, he could only hide Miao Yi's identity after Miao Yuan gave birth to her. Until Madame Miao's child, Miao Rongrong, was born. Miao Yi gradually appeared in the eyes of the Miao tribe. In fact, Miao Yi was born 2 months earlier than Miao Rongrong. However, for Miao Rongrong's legitimate misidentity. Chapter 28-24. However, Miao Yi gave up her identity. She did not get the reward she deserved. No one in the Miao tribe was willing to accept a second miss who was half a foreigner. No one acknowledged Miao Yi's identity. No one gave Miao Yi the respect she deserved as a second Mississippi. In addition, Madame Miao hated the Miao sisters and Miao Yi. Because Miao Yi was the child protected by the Gu King, Madame Miao did not dare to go too far. But in the dark, he had set up many obstacles for the sisters and their children. He had even thought of a vicious plan to kill Miao Yuan and her sister. She could not touch Miao Yi. She could at least touch the sisters, right? As long as the two sisters were killed. A child that had just been born would not live for long. With this thought in mind, Madame Miao's attacks became more and more vicious. Most importantly, after Miao Yixiong knew what Madame Miao had done, he did not stop her at all. This also showed his attitude to the Miao tribesmen even more clearly. Not only Madame Miao's henchmen would come looking for trouble. Even the other Miao tribesmen who could not stand the sight of outsiders would humiliate them several times. Fortunately, Miao Ji was smart and knew to attract the elders again and again, blocking several attempts to kill her. After repeated setbacks, Miao Yi almost died in Madame Miao's hands several times. Miao Yuan gradually grew up. Miao Yuan was really silly when it came to love. But as a mother, from a mother's point of view, love and whatnot were all fleeting clouds. Just like that, under the protection of the Miao sisters, Miao Yi lived to the age of 5. Miao Ji had a deep understanding of the Miao tribe's reality and their terrible faces in the past few years. They wanted to leave the Miao tribe. But those who entered the Miao tribe, without the permission of the tribe leader and the elders, could not even take a step out. If they did not leave the Miao tribe, they had to establish a foothold in the Miao tribe. They could not make the Miao tribe recognize their bloodline. Then they could only start with the Gu tribe. Back then, they were forced by Madame Miao to hide in the ancient Gu king's land. Miao Ji kept an eye out. When Miao Yuan's belly was cut by the Gu king's shell, she stepped forward to support him, leaving behind a drop of her own blood. From then on, Miao Ji could clearly feel that she was very sensitive to the aura of Gu worms. Even after Madame Miao tried to poison them several times, she could also restrain those Gu worms and take them for her own use. At first, Miao Ji was not interested in the Miao tribe's Gu. After discovering these changes, she was only wary of Madame Miao's henchmen, and had no intention of learning from Miao Gu. However, Madame Miao was overbearing. And Miao Yi, who had escaped death several times. This made Miao Ji determined to use voodoo to raise their status. Thus, Miao Ji began to secretly learn Miao Gu's voodoo techniques. The Miao tribesmen did not take Miao Ji and the other two seriously at all. From time to time, Miao Ji would act as a cleaning maid, entering the Miao Stockade village's Gu book pavilion to clean up. This also gave Miao Ji more opportunities to come into contact with Miao Gu's knowledge. In the next few months, her voodoo skills improved by leaps and bounds. Ever since Miao Yi was born, Miao Ji knew that her niece was a direct descendant of the Miao tribe that the king of venomous worms had recognized. Her talent for Miao Gu was definitely above hers. Chapter 28-25. This made Miao Ji more and more sure of her guess. So, Miao Ji taught Miao Yi all the knowledge she knew about the Gu. She also asked Miao Yi to hide her knowledge of the Gu as much as possible. The environment she grew up in made Miao Yi know how to observe people at a young age, and how not to let her mother and aunt worry about her. Naturally, she obediently listened to her aunt's words. Even Miao Yuan did not know that his daughter had begun to learn the Gu of the Miao Gu. Another year passed like this. Miao Ji's Gu was no worse than most of the Miao people. Miao Yi was indeed a talented direct descendant of the Miao people. But she learned knowledge from Miao Ji for a year. Now, her knowledge of the Gu had far surpassed Miao Rongrong, who was carefully cultivated by Miao Yixiong and Mrs. Miao. Miao Ji was very pleased about this. At this time, Miao Yi and Miao Ji's relationship was undoubtedly the best. They got along every day and discussed the Gu of the Miao Gu. It could be said that even Miao Yuan was a little jealous of their intimacy. All of this, when did it start to change? It was when Miao Yi was almost 7 years old. Miao Ji brought Miao Yi to the land of the ancient Gu king and learned the knowledge of the Gu as usual. But she met the saintess at that time, Miao Jingyi. Miao Jingyi encountered Miao Yi's Gu of the Miao talent. After hearing Miao Yi's identity, she decisively proposed that Miao Yi be her candidate for the next saintess. At this time, Miao Jingyi had reached the qualification to ascend to the upper realm. But she had to stay in the Miao tribe for 50 years. Now there were still a few years. But after seeing Miao Yi, Miao Jingyi had another plan. Miao Jingyi wanted to pass the position of the saintess to Miao Ji and take charge of the position for 7 years. In the saintess selection ceremony 7 years later, she would pass it to Miao Yi. This plan sounded like a way for Miao Ji and Miao Yi to change their situation. But Miao Jingyi's request was not only this. The reason why Miao Jingyi chose Miao Yi was that Miao Yi was a direct descendant protected by the Gu king. She had been the saintess of the Miao tribe for 40 years and could not get close to the Gu king. She wanted to see Miao Yi borrow the power of the Gu king. She wanted to see the connection between Miao Yi and the Gu king. Although, since Miao Yi was born, the elders had mentioned that Miao Yi was the direct descendant of King of Venomous Worms. But in fact, they didn't really touch the Gu king. They didn't dare to get close to him. Let Miao Shi see the connection between Miao Yi and King of Venomous Worms. What if all his guesses were wrong? Miao Yi had come into contact with the King of Venomous Worms and was corroded by its poison. What should she do then? Miao Ji did not dare to take this risk. Miao Yi was everything to her and Miao Yuan. She couldn't risk Miao Yi for the sake of her future status. However, Miao Shi was eager to ascend. Miao Zhi did not reply. Thus, he took the initiative to look for Miao Yuan. Only then did Miao Yuan realize that his sister and daughter had actually secretly put in so much effort for this family, after hearing the conditions for Miao Yi to contact the Gu King. Miao Yuan refused without hesitation. Miao Shi didn't insist. She just said, which expert doesn't walk on the edge of danger? If a talented Miao Gu genius like Yi is buried because of you, are you sure she won't blame you when she grows up? He wouldn't blame them. Chapter 28-26. That was right. If Miao Yi grew up and found out that he had rejected her chance to become strong, would he blame her? She didn't know. Unable to answer this question. Miao Zhi was also unable to make a decision. The 7-year-old Miao Yi, who had been sensitive since she was a child, sensed the atmosphere. Miao Shi's visit to Miao Yuan and Miao Zhi had aroused Madame Miao's vigilance. Once again, he was ruthless. In order to protect Miao Yi, Miao Yuan was seriously injured. Only then did Miao Yi know that Miao Shi asked her to prove that she was related to Gu King. She looked at her mother, who was lying on the bed with a pale face but was always thinking about her. Miao Yi chose to agree with Miao Shi's proposal. She was still young. But after all, the environment she grew up in made her very clear. In the Miao tribe, if he wanted to stand firm, if he wanted to gain the recognition of the Miao tribe, if he wanted to protect his mother and aunt, if he wanted to avenge his mother, she had to stand at the highest position in the Miao tribe, the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. She wanted to become the saintess of the Miao tribe. Madame Miao must pay the price. She wanted to make that so-called father and sister regret treating the three of them with such an attitude. She wanted to protect her mother and aunt. While Miao Yuan was not paying attention, Miao Yi went to look for Miao Shi. Miao Shi had been waiting for Miao Yuan and Miao Zhi's answer. However, Miao Yi came alone to reply. He valued Miao Yi more and more. Miao Yi did not disappoint Miao Shi. She contacted Gu King in front of Miao Shi. Moreover, it did not cause the king of venomous worms to counterattack. When Miao Zhi arrived at the land of the Gu King, what he saw was Miao Yi putting her hand on the giant king of venomous worms. The hearts of the people of the Hmong village almost stopped beating. Miao Zhi rushed over to stop him. However, Miao Shi stopped her. She heard Miao Shi muttering to herself, as expected, it's her, the destined holy maiden Miao Gu. Miao Zhi did not understand what he meant. She only knew that when she came to her senses, Miao Shi had already held Miao Yi's hand and walked in front of her. Miao Shi's eyes were filled with smiles. This child is the next Holy Virgin. There are only 4 years left until the Holy Virgin selection. In these 4 years, I'll have to trouble you, to help her grow up to the point where she has the qualifications to become the holy daughter. In a daze, Miao Zhi brought Miao Yi back. Then, he was secretly summoned by Miao Shi. On the same day, Miao Shu Yi gave her saintess position as well as the gu worms that she had nurtured for decades to Miao Zhi. He even told Miao Zhi, Miao Yi would become the master of Gu King. However, with Miao Yi's current mental strength, she could not control the Gu King for her own use. If he wanted Miao Yi to contract with the king of venomous worms before she became the Holy Virgin, the only way was for Miao Yi to lose all support and grow up alone. That was to say, Miao Zhi, who had become the Holy Maiden, could no longer take care of Miao Yi as the Holy Maiden. And Miao Yuan could no longer protect Miao Yi. Everything, let Miao Yi grow on her own. He could increase his mentality and form a contract with the ancient Gu King. Miao Zhi hesitated. Miao Yuan, who was seriously injured in bed, made the decision for her. Miao Yuan knew very well that he could not survive this serious injury. Miao Yi had such a chance now. As long as she became the holy maiden of the Miao tribe in the future, Miao Yi's future would be peaceful. Chapter 28-27. Miao Yuan knew that becoming the saintess was the greatest guarantee for Miao Yi's future. So, she gritted her teeth, with her seriously injured body, and Miao Ji left the small courtyard where she lived with Miao Yi. Moved to the place where the saintess lived. In the first few days, Miao Yi thought her mother was taken away by her aunt for treatment. But 7 days passed. She still did not hear any news about her mother and aunt. Miao Yi also felt something was wrong. She was only 7 years old, and she was famous for being a waste. The Miao people did not treat Miao Yi as the second miss of Miao tribe, nor were they wary of her. Miao Yi asked around. From the gossip of the Miao people, she got some information. For example, because of Madame Miao's ruthless attack this time, Miao Yuan was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Miao Yuan was afraid, so he handed his dying sister to Madame Miao. And on the day he handed her over, Miao Yuan died. The cause of death was unknown. But the Miao people knew. Madame Miao hated Miao Yuan so much, how could Miao Yuan survive in her hands? As for Miao Ji, because she handed over her sister, it seemed that she was rewarded by Madame Miao and went to live a good life. Miao Yi could not be sure whether these gossips were true or false. And the only thing she could be sure of was, Miao Rongrong had come to her with her fangs and claws bared. Her mother was indeed dead. Indeed, Miao Ji handed her to Madame Miao personally. At that moment, Miao Yi's heart was completely swallowed by darkness. She became a child without a father or mother. She became the lowest person in Miao tribe. Anyone could trample on her pride at will. She promised her mother, before she could confirm that she was the saintess, don't show your talent and strength in Gu. She always remembered this advice. And paid a real price. No matter how hard the days were. In the eyes of outsiders, she was still a waste to the point that everyone could bully. But, in private, Miao Yi never relaxed her absorption of Miao tribe's Gu. She put all her effort into cultivation. She wanted to become the saintess of Miao tribe. Open and above board, kill Madame Miao, Miao Yixiong, Miao Rongrong, then find Miao Ji and make her kneel in front of her mother's grave to apologize. To avenge his mother. The memories ended, after Miao Ji told him everything, her face was visibly relieved. It was probably because these words had been suppressed in his heart for far too long. She couldn't bear the pressure anymore. Yi didn't know that you were just acting as the sacred maiden for her for 4 years? After Yi Qing Luo heard all the memories, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart, how fate made fools of people. Yes. Miao Ji shook her head. Yi Qing Luo sighed. It was no wonder that Miao Yi would reveal such an expression when she saw Miao Ji. His hatred towards Miao Ji had risen so quickly in that instant. Chapter 28-28. Back then, why did you hand Yi's mother over to that Madame Miao? Although Yi Qing Luo had some guesses, but she still wanted to hear it from Miao Ji personally. Miao Ji's eyes drooped down, her pale fingers curled up tightly. When she opened her mouth again, her voice was obviously bitter. That was sister's last request, I had no choice but to do so. Saying that, her voice was already choked with sobs. She stopped and closed her eyes, suppressing the grievance in her heart. For so many years, Miao Yi had been misunderstanding her. And she, for the sake of the big picture, swallowed all these grievances. And now, she could finally speak out this grievance. Sister, because of protecting Yi, was seriously injured. Even if she used medicinal pills to hang on, she would not live for more than a few days. Because she knew her own body, after sister asked me to bring her away from Yi, she took the initiative to send her to Madame Miao, to make a deal with Madame Miao. Madame Miao indeed hated sister. Sister's existence was like a constant reminder to her that her daughter was not the direct bloodline of the Gu King. Her daughter was not the proper eldest miss of the Miao family. When I acted according to sister's wishes, as long as we hand over sister, Madame Meow would use the Meow tribe's poison to swear not to hurt Yi. And also promise to let Yi live, to live till 15 years old. Madame Meow agreed to it. After Miao Ji finished saying these, she was already sobbing. Memories of the past kept surfacing in his mind. And it kept replaying the scene of how she handed Miao Yuan over to Madame Meow. And also saw with her own eyes, how her own sister died in Madame Meow's hands. Yi Qing Luo remained silent. She guessed that Miao Ji handed Miao Yuan over, had a motive. But she didn't expect it would be for such a motive. Indeed, such a choice. If it was her, she would also do the same. Miss Yi. Miao Ji took a deep breath, stopping herself from losing her composure. One hand was still covering her mouth, as she choked and asked, even if everything had a reason, do you think, she will forgive me? Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips tightly, not giving an immediate answer. Her clear eyes flickered as she shifted her gaze towards Dmo Xian. She clenched the man's fingers tightly. Whether I forgive or not, it's not up to me to decide. After Yi Qing Luo finished this sentence, her fingers clenched even tighter. She looked at the man's pale face. She recalled the pain she had felt earlier, and how she could only walk by relying on him. Her eyes flickered, but in the end, she still chose selfishness. I promise you that I will give you a chance to explain your misunderstanding calmly, but whether or not you can forgive her will depend on Yi's choice. After saying that, her gaze slowly turned to a certain direction outside the house. How long more do you plan to squat there and eavesdrop? Yi Qing Luo's words had just landed. Miao Ji's entire body stiffened, as though she understood the meaning behind Dmo Xian's words. Her eyes suddenly widened as she looked towards the direction where Yi Qing Luo's gaze had landed. The wind blew, bringing with it the fragrance of the surrounding grass and leaves that were the food of the goo worms. There was also the rustling sound of countless goo worms squirming. Even after staring for a long time, the figure that Zhang Xian had imagined did not appear before him. Miao Ji's initial nervousness gradually turned into disappointment. Chapter 28-29. Not coming out means that after you know the truth, you're unable to face your aunt? Yi Qing Luo didn't mind Miao Ji's words as she continued looking at that direction, or is it because, even after knowing the truth, you're still unable to forgive her? Miao Ji's expression froze on her face when she heard what she said. Her face started to turn pale. Her clenched fists clenched even tighter. Yi Qing Luo was so certain. She was certain that Miao Yi was not far away from this guest room. Which meant to say that all the memories she mentioned earlier. Miao Yi heard all of it. Miao Yi knew the cause and effect of everything. Was it as what Yi Qing Luo said, unable to face her? Or was it because she was unable to forgive? In this uneasy atmosphere, the atmosphere was very tense. A young lady dressed in the Miao tribe's sacred maiden candidate's attire slowly walked into their sight. The young lady's face was filled with tears. A pair of beautiful eyes stared intently at Miao Ji, as though she was confirming something. When Miao Ji's gaze fell onto the young lady's face, she seemed to have turned into a fossil as she froze on the spot. Didn't you want a chance for the both of you to resolve the misunderstanding peacefully? Why are you still in a daze here for? Yi Qing Luo shot a glance at Miao Ji as she spoke calmly. These two had been toyed with by fate and there were too many misunderstandings between them. The matters between them. Outsiders couldn't interfere. Only if the both of them were frank and open, saying out what was in their hearts, could it be resolved. Yi Qing Luo had no intention to interfere in their grudges. Miao Ji's throat moved as her pale lips trembled slightly. But after some time, she couldn't spit out a single word. If one took a closer look, one would be able to tell. At this moment, Miao Ji's body was trembling slightly. One of them stiffened, not daring to open his mouth to break the silence. The other's face was filled with tears as he watched quietly. This situation lasted for almost half an incense stick of time. Yi Qing Luo might as well take action directly as she threw the both of them out. Go go go, don't disturb Xian's rest. Closing the room door, Yi Qing Luo returned to the bed and sat down. One hand, holding the man's wide palm. As though this was the only way to let him feel that she was by his side. But her butt hadn't even warmed up in time. Suddenly, he felt something tighten around his waist. Then, he felt the world spin around him. Her body had already fallen onto the bed. The man's hot and hard body firmly fixed her delicate body between his arms. The familiar scent of sandalwood filled his nose. The man's long, ink-like hair cascaded down and landed on her face, stirring her skin. Yi Qing Luo's pupils constricted, through her hair. Her eyes reflected that peerless, noble, and indifferent face. It was Dmo Xian. He woke up. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up slightly as she revealed a joyful look. Ah Xian, your body. What's wrong with this sovereign? Dmo Xian narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes as his thin lips curved upwards. So impatient to fulfill your promise to this lord? Yi Qing Luo's pupils shook. In his body, was it still the centrifugal goo that controlled it? Had he become the black-bellied, powerful overlord who had forgotten about her again? Why are you in a daze? Dmo Xian bent down and his thin lips came close to hers as he gave a low hoarse laugh. Racking your brains to get this sovereign into this small room, a lone man and woman. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.